Welcome back to Bets of the North. We're rolling in dough. Doug Lesmerises and Tyler Shoemaker off a hugely successful week last week, T-Shoe, where we won money and I don't know if you could bet a parlay on Georgia doesn't come anywhere close to covering and the head coach shoves a guy, but I would have bet that parlay if you could have bet it because it would have hit. Man. Mississippi State plus 34. They only lose to Georgia by 10. That was our $500 bet last week, and I am just flying high, brother.
That was awesome. And that's one of those where we talk about, you kind of have a feel for either the spread or the total or whatever. And that one was like, I think you and I both kind of thought it was just going to be like a 17-0 type game. And it ended up being like a shootout where Mississippi State scores 24 points on the Georgia defense. We'll get to that later, I guess, but I am out on Georgia and the Georgia defense. Well, we'll get there. We'll get there. I don't want to get ahead of ourselves, but my God.
Welcome to being out on Georgia. It's lovely here. Oh, we get to make fun of people. We win money. Oh, it's the best. USA Today, by the way, I'm like waiting for everybody to finally call out Kirby Smart, and USA Today released its coach money rankings and did a big, like they do every year. It's really good, useful stuff for college football media. So thanks to USA Today for doing that. But they wrote a companion Kirby Smart story as part of that. And nobody would talk. Basically, the only person they talked to is the former Georgia AD, I guess, who hired Kirby. And then the story was basically like, well, he's made Georgia a ton of money, so he can do whatever he wants. And it was like, oh, okay, I'm glad somebody said it. So, he made us a ton of money. So thanks, Curb. Woo! Also, so that was, we are now up more than $1,800, T-Shoe, from our original $5,000 bankroll that we are going to give to charity at the end of the year. If we somehow hit a cold streak and we end up with less than $5,000, we're going to give at least $5,000 to charity. But if we're ahead and we're in good shape, we're at 68, 17. We will give more. We will give all of it to charity. None for you, none for me, all for charity. So we're feeling good about that because last week we hit the $500 bet on Georgia and we hit our plus money swing that was more than 2-1 on a parlay of Kansas State money line and the under on Ole Miss LSU that you loved, and you nailed that because that game went to overtime and we still comfortably hit the under. But I was nervous going in overtime. It was like, how dare you? Do not do this. But you were all over that, talking about totals over 60, and that total was in the 40s in regulation, not in the 60s.
Yeah, I was a little nervous too because I was tracking it throughout the game, and it was like, okay, this under is looking great all game, and then it goes to overtime, and I'm like, oh, because you never know. You may end up with a Texas A&M LSU game from from the Joe Burrow year where it was you go 6 overtimes and you score 3,000 points. So it's I'm glad we cashed it though. It was a great week for the show. Great week for you again. Not so great for my individual bets. I don't know what's going on, but I'm glad that we made money for the show and for the hungry children. That's what we're here for.
So I do want to ask a question because I think I actually went 1 and 2 on my best bets, and this is why. So for the year, you are now 11 and 13 on your best bets. I'm 9 and 8, but the real money, we're 5 and 2 on the $500 bets, and we're up more than $1,400 on those. And our plus money swings, we're only betting $100 a week on those, T-Shoe, and we're up almost $450, $449.66. So again, there's just a lot of good stuff happening. This is what happened to me last week. And before we get into our picks this week, I want a little advice from you because it hit both ways. The Kansas State Colorado line was either 3 or 3.5. I think they won by 3. So in our parlay, we took the money line. And that was a very smart decision by us that they won the game and we won our bet. But if we had tried to take the actual spread, we might have either pushed or lost that bet. I lost 2 bets last week on small favorites that I gave the points and they won the game but didn't cover. So Pitt, I thought was going to blow out Cal. They did not blow out Cal. I think they were a 3.5 point favorite and they won by 2. And Minnesota against UCLA, I took them as a 4.5 point favorite and they won by 4. So I got the winning team, but the whole thing is you're betting against the spread here. Is there anything about small favorites where if you really feel like I think I have the better team here, maybe let me just take the money line at worse odds. And then if they win, they win. And I'm not losing out because I had a -4 and they only won by a field goal. Like I understand this is how betting works, but I also kind of was like a little bit mad of is there a smarter way I could have bet those games? You know what I mean? Are you ever worried about betting on small favorites?
Not necessarily, and it's not a terrible idea. We kind of talked about this before, where like the 1 week where you were like, let's buy the alternate prices because you get the comfort or the cushion built in. But that's already kind of baked into the line, and that's why on my college football guide on my sheet, when I have my projections laid out, and then I have like my edge against the spread, but then I also have an edge against the money line, and sometimes the edge on the spread is not the same team that's the edge on the money line. So it just, again, it's like a whole separate thing. It just depends on the price. So like you may be able to get value. Now I will say, I think most of the time, generally speaking, the value on the money line is going to be on the underdogs because so many people put small favorites into their parlays. The books kind of protect themselves against that, and they kind of inflate those money lines a little bit on their short favorites. So yes, like you would have won those 2 bets last week betting the money line, but you also over the long term, you're paying a premium to do that. So I would say long term, it's probably not a great strategy to say like, I'm never going to bet short favorites against the spread. I'm only going to bet money lines. But I also think if you kind of pick and choose your spots of like, well, especially in that Minnesota UCLA game, where it's like, okay, there's a low total, that sort of thing. That might have been a good spot. Might have been a good spot to do it. But generally speaking, I think the underdogs are going to have more value on the money line.
Okay, I do like favorite money line parlays though. So I hit I hit a 6-way parlay. Money line parlay last week, all favorites at +610. Notre Dame hit Illinois, Iowa State, Minnesota, Kansas State. So that was one of those where Kansas State, Minnesota, Pitt, 3 of the games we're talking about that were right on it on the spread, where if you had bet the spread, you might have pushed or lost. I hit those 3 money lines, plus Iowa State and Notre Dame won easily, and I got a miracle win by Illinois because Purdue won for 2 in overtime and lost. So I escaped by the skin of my teeth with Illinois. And I didn't that was just me on my thing. I mean, what did I do on that? I bet $3 and I got a little bit of a boost. So I won $26. So it's not like I bought a new car with my bet, but those, and you use the word comfort or cushion. I prefer the word fear, and I'm not afraid to use that. I am afraid of betting. That's why when it's my own money, I bet $3 and I search for money line favorites to bet on. But sometimes I just think I have a good feel for who's going to win, and I just want to bet on that. And so you're going to tell me that's a sucker bet, right? A 6-team favorite money line parlay at only +610. You're going to tell me that's a sucker bet, right? I got 6 games right, and I only got 6-1 on the odds.
Would not recommend as your primary betting strategy, but for a one-off, I even tweeted last week. I was like, don't say I never have any fun. I posted a $5 10 team parlay that I put in just for the hell of it. Obviously did not cash, but have some fun with it. I wouldn't make that. I was talking to a guy last week that was kind of asking me about betting, and he was like, well, why wouldn't I just put a bunch of plays together and bet a little to win a lot? And I'm like, well, brother, because long term that's not going to work out too well. He was like, wait, why would I bet 110 to only win 100? And I'm like, well, that's the way it goes. That's how you're going to win long term.
Yeah. And actually, the $500 bets are examples of this right now. And we are not telling regular people to bet $500. This is our company money. This is not just so like we're not saying do that. But like we're winning, it's just basic bets mostly, right? Like we're like Mississippi State +34 is not a fancy bet. We just put money on it and won, and now we're 5-2, and now we're up $1,800. So I do think it's fun to throw in those parlays. It continues to be my instinct, because the thing that's not as, what do you think of betting money line favorites just straight up? That, like, again, you basically said don't do it. It's like, oh, if I can get a team at -4, I can get that at -110. But if I bet them on the money line, I'm going to get it at -175 or something. Most of the time, that's not going to work out for you.
Yeah, not long term. Like I said, I think if you pick your spots, and again, like, you can always message me, because I can literally run the math for you and tell you if it makes sense or not, which is what we've done with a lot of these parlays we've done. You know, that's what we do. We agree on the plays. I run the numbers, and it's like, okay, this parlay should be these odds. You know, we're getting value still on this parlay. Let's do it. So again, it all just comes down to the math of it and the implied probability.
Okay. Let's do our big $500 bet for this week. We liked it so much that we made sure to get this bet in. Dang it. You're right. We got this bet in on Wednesday, and the line has moved against us since then. I liked this on Monday. We bet it on Wednesday, and now here we are on Thursday. We got this bet, Iowa -6 at Michigan State at -110. That bet is in the house on DraftKings, and as we record now, it is Iowa -5 at -112. So we would have gotten an extra point for a tiny little bit more juice. This was a game that I was researching for our Thursday pick show as well. Michigan State, off a bye, is saying that maybe they think they figured some things out offensively, but Aiden Childs has turned the ball over a ton. And I don't think the Iowa defense is the defense that a struggling offense gets healthy against. Michigan State, just a lot of their turnover stats and some other things are just terrible. And you look at what Iowa did to Ohio State in the first half a couple weeks ago, before Ohio State really got going. You look at what Iowa did to I think Iowa held Washington to 16 points last week. I think Washington and Michigan State are similar in that they have talented players, but they shoot themselves in the foot, except Washington has more talent. And I think Michigan State shoots itself in the foot even more. And Iowa handled Washington. Now, Washington moved the ball, but they turned it over twice. They got stopped on downs 3 times. That was in Kinnick. I get that. I don't think it's a huge home field edge for Michigan State in Spartan Stadium. So I was all over this. You were like, go. And so now you can get it at -5. So you're getting the Hawkeyes. You're given less than a touchdown as the bottom line, T-Shoe. And I love this almost as much as I love Mississippi State +34 last week.
Yeah, the Washington thing is interesting, because I looked as you were talking there. I've got Washington as like a touchdown better than Michigan State. So, and we saw what Iowa just did. I know you can't, transitive property, but I think the point remains. I think Iowa is a lot better than Michigan State. Got some numbers here to back this up. I project Iowa -8.5.
Okay.
All of my formulas were unanimous, like clearly above, even above 7.5. So like I would play this up to 7. Like if for some reason by the time the show airs, the line has been bet up to 7, like I would still play it at 7.
Okay.
I think the market is slow on Iowa, particularly offensively. They're covering games right now this season by 5.5 points per game. Since 2021, which is always kind of my reference point when a team has had the same coach, because like last 3 years, that's more modern, more relevant trends. Iowa is 11-5 against the spread as the road team, covering by 4.5 points per game. And in that same time frame, they are 5-0 as a road favorite, covering by 11 points per game. So when Kirk Ferentz has been a road favorite, they have absolutely taken care of business in a big way. So one thing that I'm really experimenting with right now with some of my formulas is taking out Power 4 teams' grades against Group of 5 or FCS, like removing those altogether. Just like, what have you done against the best teams you've played, against the Power 4 teams? And when I do that, I project Iowa -17. Because here are the game grades against Power 4 opponents. Rattle these off real quick. Iowa, 9.5 game grade against Iowa State, which means 9.5 points above what the average team would be expected to do. Okay. 9.5, 21 versus Minnesota, 27.5 versus Washington. I took out Ohio State because Ohio State's just so much better than both these teams. I think that messes with the data. It still was in favor of Iowa, but so Michigan State against Maryland, they had a 1.9, Boston College -0.3, and against Oregon 1.1. So basically Michigan State's played like an average team essentially, while Iowa's played like a team that's about 2.5 scores above average. So like I said, I project this Iowa -17 looking at just that data. Everything I look at is all Iowa. Again, I check the weather, check the injuries. I don't know why this line moved the other way. I think people are just trying to outsmart themselves, and I think Iowa's going to kill them.
I think it's a misread on Iowa. They lost. They have two in the loss column. They lost to Iowa State, undefeated Iowa State by a point. I think Iowa State's one of the best 5 to 8 teams in the country. They were very competitive with Ohio State in the first half on the road, and then got blown out in the second half. But the only defense that Iowa's faced that has stopped Caleb Johnson is Ohio State. He's run for like 150 against everybody else. And again, how good this Iowa defense is. Washington kind of got it going and beat Michigan. That was at home against a good Michigan defense. And then when they went and like, okay, now face the Iowa defense, it's like, oh, okay, that didn't work at all, right? Iowa kind of completely shut down Minnesota. Minnesota came back on the Michigan defense. Like the Iowa defense, not unexpectedly, is awesome. And they're one-handed on offense still, but the one hand they have has like Iron Man grip strength. Like, so they are the one-arm man from The Fugitive, man, right? I mean, like they only have one arm, but they're a killer. So they should call their offense the Fugitive offense. It's actually not that good. I actually kind of want to make that the Fugitive offense, the Iowa Fugitive offense. The one-arm man. Yeah, because like they still throw for like 112 yards per game, but nobody can stop Caleb Johnson. I think this score is something like 31-6 or 28-9. Or I think it, famous last words, I think this is a smooth, easy cover, as easy as last week's was. I'm telling you, Tishu, this is not that hard. Like, I got all these formulas. I'm up until 3:00 in the morning dunking and making algorithms. Man, it's not that hard. This is a bad line. We both figured it out. You figured it out with math. I figured it out. Well, it's not cram it because it's two Northern teams. But I don't buy. Do you buy too obvious? Sometimes you'll hear betting people like, I don't want to bet that line because it's too obvious. And especially as this line moves against us, right? Yeah. I was like, let's get it at 6 before it's 7.5. And instead we got it at 6 and it moved to 5. I think sometimes movement like that scares people, but it doesn't change the football, right? And it doesn't change your numbers. So are you ever scared off by things that seem too good to be true?
I'm not. And I'm going to try to say this as politely as possible because I know a lot of people use this type of language when talking about betting. But one of my hashtag bet peeves is when people say this line's fishy or this is a stinky line. That doesn't exist. It's not a trap. It's not fishy. It is what it is. And here's another point I will make. One trend that I've noticed this year in particular in college football is a lot of these early to midweek line moves have been head fakes by these betting syndicates. Like there are these large betting groups that bet a lot of money and they influence the market. They will bet a certain way early in the week to move a line a little bit, and then they come back on Friday or on game day and absolutely hammer it the other way. We saw this with an example this week already was Troy in particular. That line it opened at 11, got bet up to 13.5, and then on game day shot down to as low as 8.5. So I think this might be a head fake. I'm not going to be the least bit surprised if this comes back on Friday or Saturday and closes at 7 or above.
Okay. So bottom line, we feel very good about the idea. If you can get Iowa anywhere less than a touchdown, even at 7, Tishu said that was good. So, with a low scoring team, you get to 7.5 and all of a sudden Iowa dominates the game and plays really well and wins 20-13. And you lose your bet if it's 7.5. But in the meantime, we're winning 20-13. So honestly could not feel better about this. I think there have been maybe 3 bets this year so far where we felt great, and like this is one of them. Like really, really, really great. And I think this is definitely one of them. Now we go to the plus money swing, and this is going to be a bet against the South. And I want to read the exchange that Tishu and I had. How do you feel about a Texas-Tennessee money line parlay at plus 255? Doug texted to his friend Tishu. Tishu responded, is it because they're orange? So, first of all, that's fair. I've tried to bet an orange parlay before. Second of all, it helps. It's a nice bonus. Orange is my second favorite color. So you got the burnt orange and you got the Tennessee orange, and like you're all good. But really what this is A, Connor O'Gara from Saturday Down South came on our Wednesday show and picked Tennessee and Texas to win these games. 2, I agree with that. I would pick Texas, especially Texas and Tennessee, to win these games. And 3, we are going to have a good old time rooting against Bama and Georgia to lose on the same weekend. So this is somewhat like the bet last week, where we're betting with our brains because we like it, but also with our heart and souls because we want to root for it, because we want the South to be on fire. Now, it's still 2 Southern wins, but Bama, Georgia both losing after half the world was like Bama, Georgia is going to be a rematch in the national title game. I want everything to burn, Tishu. And I want to win money while it happens.
Yeah, that is hilarious. That is an absolute. That was the actual text exchange. He's not making that up. That was literally my first response was, is it because they're orange? No, I really like.
You're in your house and your wife hears you go, and your wife yells, is Doug trying to do a parlay based on colors again? She knows by now.
Basically. So I did run the numbers on this because, again, like I like to make sure the math makes sense even when we're doing these parlays. I would make this parlay odds plus 240. So we're getting, 15 cents here of value. I really like that. I think this Texas Georgia line is going to close somewhere around 5.5. It's been at 3.5 most of the week. We saw it touch 5 on Wednesday. Obviously
4.5 on DraftKings right now as we record. 4.5.
Yeah, I think 5.5 is probably where that's going to close.
Okay.
So I do like that. I project Texas minus 6.5. I think they're going to win by a touchdown here. Obviously, Tennessee being the underdog is the one you feel less good about because they're an underdog. But I really like that they're at home. That Neyland Stadium crowd is very good. They're definitely going to be jacked up to play Alabama again. Last time Bama was there, they threw the goalpost in the river. So my number's right in line with the market here. But like I said, I mentioned my power 4 only formula that I'm running, and that likes Tennessee to win by 1. So I do really like this. I think Tennessee is absolutely going to be right there with a chance to win and getting plus money here. I really like it.
The Tennessee offense has struggled the past couple of weeks, but Landis made this point on the Wednesday show, and Connor O'Gara agreed that the best unit in the Tennessee-Alabama game is the Tennessee defense. And there have been some other defenses not nearly as good as Tennessee's, which has some NFL guys on it that have given Alabama trouble. And so I think this is not necessarily like, oh, Nico Iamaleava has to throw for 350 and 4 touchdowns to beat Bama. This is more Jalen Milroe, maybe kind of trying to do it by himself, and James Pierce and a bunch of other people for Tennessee are making it hard on him. So I like the swing, right? And this is one of those, I think Texas minus the points up to a touchdown could be a really good bet for people. I think wherever you want to figure that out, that's great. But I like putting this together to get it over plus 250. So I like this one a lot. So those are our 2 real money bets for this week. Again, we're up more than $1,800. Man, I'd love to be up to $2,000 by next week. That would be, that'd be some hot tamales. Oh my gosh.
Up $2,000 in October. That'd be excellent.
I mean, like that's like a 40% return on the investment, man. Like that is like, they're going to write stories about us. I think they're like sing folk songs about us.
What was the show? You want to go on the Today Show? Is that it? Maybe we'll get to do that.
Apparently, Hoda Kotb is retiring, and so maybe we could be her final interview. And now we bring in the men who started with a $5,000 bankroll and pushed it up to $8,100. It's a miracle. It's never been done in the history of betting. For my final interview, let's welcome from Bet to the North. Tishu and the guy who loves parlays based on colors. All right, let's get to our best bets this week. The first one off the top for you, Tishu. These are the ones we don't put our company money on, but we still like them for ourselves and for you. I was intrigued to see this because I agree with it, and I didn't necessarily know that you would be thinking this way about Colorado with your numbers. Colorado +3 at Arizona. We got it at -108 on DraftKings. Why do you like the Buffs here?
Yeah, well, for one, I think early in the week, I saw this line start to drift towards Arizona, and I was like, what's going on? And it was injury news related to Travis Hunter and
yes,
a couple other of the Colorado receivers. By all accounts, they expect to play and be productive in this game, and Arizona has a pretty bad defense to boot. So I think the Colorado offense is going to be able to do pretty much what they want. I project Colorado as a 1.5 point favorite here. And again, Arizona's kind of propped up by their non-Power 5 numbers. Power 4. When I take those numbers out and look at only what they've done against Power 4 opponents, I project Colorado -5.5. So against the better competition, Colorado's been better than Arizona. So I think Arizona, I've said this a million times. We faded them several times here before. I think they were overrated in the preseason. We're still at the point of the season where odds makers are putting preseason priors into the data, as am I to an extent. And then Arizona beat Utah early in the season, which at the time everyone was like, "Wow, Arizona beat Utah," but like we see what Utah is now. That's not the Utah that you think of. They're not a very good team. So I think they're propped up on a lot of narrative and like fake stuff. I think they're fake overrated. So I really like Colorado here, plus the 3. I think there were some 3.5s out there as well. So anything 3 or better, maybe even sprinkle the money line. I do think they're probably going to win outright.
And I do like this. I think Colorado, we've talked about it a lot, is just a pretty competent football team at this point. They played great against Kansas State last week at home. Barely lost that game. They were convincing on the road at UCF the week before. I don't think the road trip is a big problem for them. So I endorse this one as well. So I like this best bet from you. Next one is a team that we've also won on with you previously. It's Notre Dame. You like a -112 versus Georgia Tech. We got that at -110. Your numbers just like the Irish, right?
They do. They were high in the preseason. Obviously, that looked a little foolish when they lost to Northern Illinois. Excuse me. But I will say, so I project this game at 14 as it stands, just with my regular numbers. And I know you can't say like, well, if you take out all the bad stuff, they're really good. But if you take out the Northern Illinois game in particular, but if you remove the non-power conference opponents game grades from these teams, I would project Notre Dame -25.5. I mean, that Northern Illinois loss is just like such an albatross.
Yeah,
that it's really artificially deflating the Notre Dame value, I think. And obviously, like that's a huge popular like loss that Notre Dame has. Like everyone knows they lost to Northern Illinois. Everyone knows that. Right. So I think that's in the back of people's minds, and I think that's why this line is staying where it's at. I think they're going to crush them. I looked under Marcus Freeman. So all of Notre Dame's like struggles have been at home. You know, the Marshall game, Northern Illinois, the Stanford game last year, like those have all been at home. Under Marcus Freeman, when Notre Dame's on the road, they've covered by an average of 8 points per game. Oh. For whatever reason, they have gotten it done on the road under Marcus Freeman. So, you know, I like that trend. I like the numbers. I like the power forward numbers only in particular. So I think Notre Dame's going to roll here.
So there's the two main things I think with Notre Dame this year have been injuries are an issue, and Ben Morrison is now out for the year, but they've been dealing with offensive line injuries and defensive injuries like all year. So he's a huge loss for them, but they've been trying to make up for this all year. And other than Northern Illinois, they've been winning. And then their whole thing was they don't know how to handle a success. Right. So that's been the issue with Marcus Freeman. Like after big games, the next week they fall apart, which was the Northern Illinois trend. But like they're removed from that. They focused on that. Like I don't think that's who they are week to week. So to your point, if the Northern Illinois loss is still deflating them, sort of what caused the Northern Illinois loss is not at play in something like this. And to your point, whenever there is a team that performs better on the road than at home, I think this happens with Ohio State sometimes too. I think there are certain places where you are so good and your standard is so high that when you play at home, if something goes wrong, the home crowd can pucker a bit. And all of a sudden, instead of supporting you, they're making you nervous. And if you're just out on the road doing your thing, that doesn't happen. So I'm not trying to be an expert on every home crowd, but just based on the math of what you're saying, it kind of might make sense to me that Notre Dame's like against the spread better on the road than they are at home.
Yep.
So, okay. Last one is, this is like the T-shoe special. This is the in the weeds bet of the week. It's Memphis, North Texas, under 66.5 at -108. And guess what? It's T-shoe going under another total in the 60s.
Yeah. Like I said, these have just been money. I think a lot of people, I mean, I'll be honest, North Texas has been an over machine this year. Like they play virtually no defense. So like I get it. I'm sure there's going to be people that perhaps scoff at this play. But on the other side of North Texas is Memphis, who this is where I think the line gets inflated. Like, yes, North Texas's games have been bonkers all year. Memphis, though, I think has this reputation of this like high flying offense, play no defense, really fun team. But that's not who they are this year. They've been very low scoring this year. They've been very defense led this year. I project 63. So, we're getting decent value on the number here. It's not crazy, but decent value. Formulas were unanimous on the under here. Total 64 and above have gone under in 16 of 24 games. That's 67% this year. And of those games, 4-1 when my number agrees with the under. So 80% when TSI is on an under of 64 or higher. And to my point, Memphis is 4-1 to the under when they're favored. So when they're, dictating the game, they've gone 4-1 to the under and going under by 7.5 points per game. And further, they're 3-0 to the under at home, going under by 18 points per game at home.
Wow.
It's been unreal. So I really like this under. We've already seen it tick down. I bet it earlier in the week at 67. So we've seen it tick down to 66.5. I think this will continue to come down as the week goes on.
What are you still okay with it if it gets to 65.5, 65, 64.5? Would you still say it?
I would play it to 66 is the next key number. So I would say 66 or better.
Okay. All right. So T-shoe, and this is one of those. I think I'll put a little bit of the old Doug $2 bets on this. This is like I want to cash $1.78 on this baby. I'm feeling good about this. All right. So those are 3 math bets for you, and now here are my vibes best bets. They're all unders. I didn't like a lot in the slate because now I'm scared off by betting small favorites. And so it's like, I think this team's going to win, but man, I don't know if I want to give 4. So I bet 3 unders this week. The first one, and I didn't tell you these beforehand, so maybe you can live check me on these. UCF Iowa State under 49. Got that at -112 on DraftKings. I think this is another Iowa State sit-on-them game. They beat Houston earlier this year, 20-0. A lot of people were in on the UCF rushing attack 3 weeks ago, and that has not proven to be very dangerous to people. They lost to Colorado. They lost to Cincinnati. And so I'm not scared of that UCF attack anymore. Iowa State has had a bunch of linebacker injuries. They might get a couple guys back this week. I just think Iowa State is an excellent team. They can be explosive, but I don't think sometimes they are explosive unless they need to be. So I think this is like 31-7, 30-3, 27-10 kind of game. So I am very comfortable under the 49 here. What do your numbers say?
So my numbers would agree with you. I project 48.5. So, pretty tight, but technically would agree with you here. The only thing that would scare me with this under, and Lord knows I've been the biggest Iowa State under better of the season. I feel like I bet their unders every week. The only thing that would scare me here is UCF, because it's like they've been the walking dead for the last few weeks. So like if they gave up 45 points to Iowa State on their own, I can't say I'd be surprised. But then also if they came back to life and that rushing attack that you mentioned somehow puts up 17 or 21 on Iowa State, like I could maybe see that too.
Yeah.
Like I think they have the talent. I just wonder if they've quit because this season has quickly gone down the drain for them. That would be my only concern, is that UCF just lays down really, and Iowa State just Iowa State gets this over by themselves. But again, numbers wise, I would agree with you. All right. It would be a stay away from me, but if I had to play it, I would play the under.
All right. Next one is I want to be on the Tennessee Bama game more. So I'm going to take this under 56.5. Based on what we said before, that the best unit in the game is the Tennessee defense, and the Tennessee offense has not been setting the world on fire lately. They were dropping 70 on MAC teams at the start of the year, but they've kind of struggled the last couple weeks. So again, I think this game is more like 28-24, 31-23, like 56.5 seems like a lot to me, Tishu. So I'll take the under at -108.
Yeah, I'm from a vibe standpoint, I'm with you. As a matter of fact, just this morning, I was just kind of looking through the board again to add to my card, and I was like, man, I'm with you. I saw the 56, and I was like, I would like an under there. So I looked at my numbers, and my numbers are at 59. So I did not play it. But I'm with you. I think, especially Tennessee, I mean, their defense is really good, and their offense has just sputtered the last couple of weeks. Like I don't know. And then I think the defense can hold Alabama to a respectable number. So, I mean, to me, this comes down to the Tennessee offense. What's the Tennessee offense going to do against the Bama defense? I think is what this bet comes down to. I would have loved to have been on an under with you, but my numbers, unfortunately, are on the over.
All right. So I'll stay vibes alone. That's okay. I'm vibing over here. I don't need anybody else to vibe with me. I am very capable of vibing alone. When I would go to fraternity parties in college, I would dance by myself in the corner. And then like everybody the next day would come up and be like, dude, you were so drunk last night. And I'd be like, I didn't have a drop. That's just joie de vivre, baby. I don't need a drink to act like I'm drunk. As people can tell by this show, I like watching that drunk guy on the betting show. He's not drunk. He's just like this.
Who knew? You were just training for our show back then.
Yeah.
Funny how it works out.
There was a lot of stuff when I was like playing video games instead of going to Greek literature class. Again, training for this show. Who knew? I use very little Greek literature on this show. It's like, why do I need to go to that class? Here's the last one. Rutgers, UCLA, under 41. UCLA is playing a 9 a.m. body clock game in New Jersey. Rutgers had maybe their 5 of their 6 best defensive players hurt last week. I think a couple will be back, but even if they're not, they'll be more prepared for it. They had a couple late scratches and guys get hurt during the game last week against Wisconsin. So they just did not play very well against Wisconsin, and I think that inflated this number a little bit. I think this could be like a 17-10 kind of game because I don't like UCLA is going to be asleep, and I do think the Rutgers defense will be better than it was last week. So what do you think of under 41 at -112?
You're in my head a little bit today because this was another one in addition to the Tennessee one that I was like, man, I want an under here. What do my numbers say? And I looked at my sheet and my numbers say 44, so I didn't bet it. But
okay.
I am with you. I do think the under is the right play here. I agree with you that I think last week did inflate the number, especially when we're talking about a margin here of like 3 points. Like I think last week's performance definitely inflated this number. I won't be surprised if this game looks more like the Rutgers-Nebraska game from a couple of weeks ago, where it's just like throwback Big Ten. I think that's what it's going to be here. So I don't bet against my numbers, but if I had to make a play here, it definitely would be the under.
Guess what I'm going to do right now? I'm going to cite Greek literature. This is like the Iliad, right? I'm the sirens. I'm the mermaids over on the rocks with my vibes calling to you. And you're passing by in your math ship. And you're like, no, I can't bet it. And I'm lying there in my bikini top. And I'm like, hey, Tishu, I got some real vibes on the UCLA body clock. Why don't you come on over? And you're going to come over and your ship's going to sink. So be careful. I know one piece of Greek literature, and it's the one that everybody knows.
Well, thanks for that visual.
Yeah. You think that vibes are doing it for people? People are like, man, I can't wait to bet this Rutgers UCLA under. Doug is really drawing me in. Woo! Okay. Please don't sink your ship on my UCLA Rutgers vibe rocks. All right, that's it. Those are our bets. I don't know what to tell you. We're winning money. You would watch the content of this show and be like, oh my God, there's no way those guys can be getting stuff right. We're winning. We've won $1,800. I don't know how to explain it other than we use just enough T-shoe math to balance out my cram it and my vibes. So I think that's why I think we've hit on something, T-shoe.
I think we have. I mean, honestly, the vibes have probably outperformed the math at this point. So we'll roll with it. I'm happy to be up.
Not to be weird about it. It's too late. Like our best bets individually we're around 500, right? But I actually do think there is something to the idea of when we come together and agree on something, that we actually are sort of taking the two ways to think about this. And I don't think it's entirely coincidental. I actually think like math first with a little bit of vibes baked in is not a bad way to go about this. So anyway, what do I know? Root against Georgia once again. Oh, it's fun and it makes money. Thanks to our producer, Mike Yarostowski, as always, for making us look good and sound good. He's Tyler Shoemaker. I'm Doug Lesmerises. We do this every Friday morning. Thanks for being here. Tell a friend. We have a good time and we try to cash some bets for now. That was Bets of the North on Kings of the North.